This is Jonathan Yates with HBCU Game Day Network. Welcome to From the Front Porch with Dr. Brenda Allen, the president of Lincoln University. Dr. Allen, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Good morning. It's still morning.
So, Dr. Allen, we recently had Dr. Christine Kelly from Dartmouth College on the show, who has an HBCU background, both as a student athlete and having worked at HBCUs. She said that the HBCUs and the Ivy Leagues have separate brands, but they share a lot in common, and they could learn from each other and should work together more. You have an HBCU and an Ivy League background, too. What do you feel about that?
Well, I do think that all institutions sort of have a special calling. For me, that's one of the great things about higher ed in this nation is that it offers a diversity of options to different students depending on what it is that they choose. But the relationship between Ivy Leagues and HBCUs go back really far. So for Lincoln University, our whole historical beginnings are invested in a huge relationship with Princeton University. Mm-hmm. So way back in the 1800s, we were known as the Black Princeton. Our early faculty all came from Princeton. Our founder graduated from the seminary at Princeton, and then all of the faculty for a very long time were Princeton grads. And so that relationship endured for the first 100 years of our existence and really didn't come under attack until, quite ironically, when we started to move towards more affirmative action and opening up more opportunities for women and minorities. I think historically black colleges at that point started to see Ivy League colleges as competition as opposed to partners. So when I returned to Lincoln 2 years ago, one of the first things I wanted to do was reestablish that relationship with Princeton. And they have been very open. We have done a couple of projects together, and we're thinking about how we can further enhance that relationship. Unlike in the past, though, there's an acknowledgement that this relationship is not one way, that it's two ways, mm-hmm. that there are things that Princeton can continue to offer Lincoln, as well as the things that Lincoln can offer to Princeton. And so we're looking more at establishing a more symbiotic relationship as opposed to one that is considered dependence.
Now, the football coach at Princeton, he said he'd like to see HBCUs playing the Ivy League in bowl games. Does that strike you as a good idea?
Sure. One thing about bowl games is that you get a lot of coverage, mm-hmm. and whether you win or lose, being in the bowl game brings some excitement to your institution and some acknowledgement. And so I think it would be a great opportunity for many HBCUs to actually get a broader audience to understand what we do, that we exist, that we have a special mission, and I think it would be great.
Now, in terms of that special mission, Dr. Kelly on my show, she said that she knew a lot of HBCU graduates with terminal degrees, JD degrees who were lawyers, MD degrees who were doctors, PhDs who were educators, and she said if they had not gone to an HBCU, they would not have even finished college, least of all completing a terminal degree, because she said there's just such a warm, embracing relationship there. Do you see that at HBCUs?
Well, that's probably my story. Mm-hmm. I came to Lincoln straight out of the inner city, as I've said many times, pretty smart, but not very well developed. Went to public high school, and so the investment in my growth and development probably was not what it should have been. But I came to Lincoln, and people saw in me potential and pushed me further than I thought I could go, and really transformed who I am today. Actually, I left Lincoln and went straight to graduate school, and then have had a wonderful career in higher education, which I give all credit to starting on this campus. So I think she's absolutely right. If we look at the statistics, HBCUs only account for 3% of all higher education institutions in this country, but they still account for about 20% of all African Americans who obtain a degree, and it's about 25% for those who go on to graduate and professional school. So we still have a huge impact on developing individuals who not only obtain a bachelor's degree, but also propel us to go on to higher education as well.
So how do you feel that going to the HBCUs have led to your success?
Oh, like I said, it started here. So Lincoln was my eye-opener. I really do feel as if my education here, just my time on this campus, sort of transformed my outlook on just what I could do and where I could make an impact. My professors were supportive, as a student and supported me in getting into graduate school. I have my second and third degree are also from HBCU, so I did my master's and my PhD at Howard University.
Was it as supportive in graduate school?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So they picked up where Lincoln left off and continued to shape and mold me. And from there, I just went on and, like I said, had a wonderful career. I went on to a postdoc at Yale, a long-term teaching position at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, some time at Brown University. And so my HBCU education prepared me to compete well, even in the Ivy League. And for me, that's just a testament to how strong the education can be.
Now, Delegate Darrell Barnes, he's chair of the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus. He was recently on the show, and when I asked him what he thought the success of HBCUs was all about, he said one word: family. He said, you know, you feel like you're at a family with an HBCU. As president of Lincoln University, what do you do to create that family atmosphere here?
Well, you know, we are a family. I went here 40 years ago, and we were smaller, and we were a family. And now I'm back, and we're probably 2, maybe 3 times the size, and it's still a family. I think it's about the mission, and that faculty and staff on this campus understand the mission. HBCUs were started with the purpose of educating African Americans, and over the years we've become more diverse, but that sense of expectation, high expectation, the idea that students can be and become whatever they want, and it's all about how we put our time and energy into developing and nurturing them, both inside and outside of the classroom, is what makes our campus special. And so when you can walk across campus and your students recognize you, they see you, they know that you are vested in their development, they embrace you as if they're your own children, you have a hard time disappointing your parents, I think. And so I know for me, my professors became my second set of parents, aunts and uncles, those who I could not disappoint, those who felt they could get on me when I was doing less than what I was supposed to do. And I think it's knowing that they care, and knowing that they believe in what I could become, is what I try to do with my students here. And that's just about trying to get to know them and open my door, spend a little time with them in their space, but always let them know that I'm working every day to make this education the best it can be for them so that they can go out into the world and do whatever it is they want to do. So,
Now, in terms of your open door, do you see more and more students coming to you and saying, you know, Dr. Allen, how do I get to be president of Lincoln University one day?
well, not necessarily president, but they come for everything. So I have a policy. I hold open office hours twice a month, open to faculty, student, and staff. And students take that opportunity often and come to talk to me about.
They're not intimidated.
No, I'm not
That's
an
wonderful.
intimidating person. So, you know, we talk about everything. And I think because of that, you know, they write me about everything. So, you know, from the water is not hot in the dorm to I'm having a problem satisfying my bill, I will get an email from a student. I would say at least 1 or 2 a day.
Oh,
And what
at
I've
2 in
had-
the morning, too. Yeah.
Well, what I've tried to do and is let them understand that there are people who work in this environment who are better able to attend to their concerns much more quickly than I can. But I accept their emails and I pass them on, and then I follow up to make sure that my staff is being responsible. And I think the more responsive we are, the more students more generally get to trust the general environment. But I believe that starts with me. If they think that they can write to me, and that I trust the people to follow up, then they'll begin to believe that everyone will be as responsive as I try to be.
You know, accessibility like that is just fantastic, particularly for a teenager away from home for the first time at school. Did you start that yourself, or did you pick that up somewhere along the way in your career?
Well, you know, that's a good question. I think that I've learned that along the way. And so, as I said, my first real teaching job was at Smith College, which is a women's college,
Yes.
with an environment very similar to a historically black college environment.
How so?
Well, that is that faculty who teach at women's colleges are generally dedicated to the mission of educating women to be independent, to thrive in places equal to men. I mean, that's been their calling from the very beginning. And so, again, it's a special education where individuals dedicate themselves to really pushing women to reach their highest goals. And one of the things I learned in the Smith College environment is that part of that is my job was to make sure that my students were successful. And they invested in me as a teacher and a scholar to ensure that I was able to do that on the ground. And it is just how the place worked. And so I've carried that with me through every other appointment that I've had because it does make a difference. When students can come to count on you to help guide them, not just academically, but to guide them and lead them to the other resources that they may need at a given time, I think that it creates a level of comfort and confidence in the environment that helps them to see that there aren't the barriers that they may encounter in other places. And so bringing that and making sure that I do that here at Lincoln becomes really very important because often people who sit in my position are seen so far away
Yes.
from the core, but my whole job is about student success. And I have to be the first one to invest in that, and I need to be the first person to understand what those obstacles might be. And you do that by allowing students to come and talk to you and to share with you what their lived experiences are, because I have the power to make changes in how we do things that can directly impact their lives positively on this campus. And so I try to make sure that they become an important part of how I understand what my job is.
Now, did you feel the same sense of family at Yale and Brown that you felt at your HBCU education?
Can't say I did at Yale. Don't want to say anything bad about
Sure.
about any university. My position there was different. I was a postdoc and a lecturer, and I was one of very few African Americans on the faculty, and I wasn't really a faculty member, just that I taught some classes. But there, even till today, I have students there, African American students and other students of color, who I've remained close to. So in those environments, I sort of served as a point person for them, where in an environment they often could not find people that they felt comfortable talking to, that I used to find myself always engaged with students, the Black Student Alliance or students who took my course. And like I said, until today, we still remain close. I still remain close with a few of those. At Brown, it was the same way. But close to students overall at Brown, regardless of race, regardless of gender. I was a chief diversity officer, so individuals who were just concerned about racism, diversity, either as it directly impacted them or impacted the world, seemed to find themselves in my office and in my company often. And I just tried to offer for them the same kind of family support that I offered the women at Smith, and that I try to offer my students here at Lincoln.
I just read an interesting article on diversity in essence where it pointed out that enrollment at HBCUs is increasing while it's declining at private schools and other schools across the country. It was a very well written article that presented balanced arguments, and one article said part of it said it was due to racial tensions. The other thing said it's due that HBCUs are reaching out more and trying to get a more diverse student body and pointing out what they have. Now, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I think it's because the HBCUs are reaching out more for more diverse student body and pointing out their aspects. Why do you think enrollment is increasing?
Well, I think it's some of both. Many HBCUs are doing a better job of marketing what their value proposition, what their value propositions are. I think at the same time, we are in a really interesting time in our country, especially in the conversation about race. One of the things about race in America is that it will resurge every 10 or 15 years, sometimes in a different form, but there's always the underlying same questions about whether or not groups who are considered to not be in the majority are as able, as capable, just as as good as others. And as that conversation heats up over time, we find that individuals want to engage in that conversation, but it's hard to do that in environments where the whole rhetoric in society may make you question whether or not you belong somewhere. And so I think right now, historically black colleges are becoming a place where young people especially are looking for a space where they can learn and grow, where they can ask questions, but a place where they don't have to question whether or not they belong there or should be there. And I think that although there's a diversity in HBCUs, not just in terms of race, but where African American students come from. Just because the majority of my students are African American, they are not all alike. They come from different backgrounds, different households. We are also international, so there's a lot of diversity within our African diasporan students. But at the same time, there are some questions about race that are similar across those individuals. And even though they think differently about them, you need to be in a space where you can actually talk about it and think about it, where you don't feel as if you're going to be attacked for asking questions. And I think historically black colleges offer students the opportunity to develop and grow generally, and when it comes to really understanding their place in society at any given moment, especially as we're talking about race right now, it becomes a place where they're more comfortable exploring those ideas.
Now, has race come up in your discussions with Princeton to increase your relationship?
Oh, absolutely. So, a school like Princeton is very interested in diversity and interested in how different opinions and outlooks on life, all of which are developed in any person based upon their life experiences. And so as we have a majority African American population, many of our students come from a low income background. That's not the demographic of a Princeton student. And having those perspectives and ideas engage with perspectives and ideas that come from other diverse backgrounds, as we know from all the literature on diversity, creates an opportunity to really develop new and novel insights and solutions to problems. And so our relationship, our desire to create a closer relationship with Princeton has a lot to do with what we understand the power of diversity to be in a learning setting. And as we can bring demographics to a conversation that's not necessarily a part of the demographic that they have in the conversation, and vice versa, we believe that it's through the power of that exchange that we can tackle some really tough problems and actually help each individual student grow in their own perspective and outlook. So when I say we want to have a more symbiotic relationship, that's exactly what it's all about, because again, at the bottom line, it's about student success. And no one can be successful in this world today without really understanding multiple perspectives. And the only way you get to really understand multiple perspectives is by to engage them. And the only way you can engage them is if you have an opportunity to engage people who are different than you are. And so the relationships that we can have with institutions that are not like us in a demographic creates an opportunity for both of our institutions to create a learning environment for our students that can really help to develop them in such a way that they can understand and handle the complexity of diversity in the world today.
Now, one way this country has always dealt with race is through sports. As a college president, do you see a bigger role for the sports teams moving forward in diversity and those other issues? As an example, at your football game tomorrow, it's Cancer and Military Appreciation Day, so you're clearly using athletics to reach out to the broader community.
Well, athletics are important for a lot of reasons, and so, some people call it the front door. It's really your front door when you're winning a lot. But, for me, athletics plays a much larger role in that it offers a co-curricular opportunity for many students to develop many of the intellectual and interpersonal skills that are going to be very important for their success going forward. So if you're on a basketball team or soccer or you're playing football, every day as you learn to compete, you're also learning to work on a team. You're learning to be cooperative. You're learning to actually think critically and problem solve. People think basketball is just running down a court and tossing a ball. It takes strategy, it takes planning. Those are just skills that will help anyone in whatever they endeavor to do. And so I think that sport can open up not just a window to your institution, but and also be used as a platform to elevate different issues. I think that it is an important opportunity for individuals to learn and develop important essential skills for a lifetime. Um, I don't think it's anything rocket science to help us to understand why it is that athletes graduate at a greater proportion than most other students. Probably because of the wraparound services that they have, but also engaging in their sport overall, I think helps to give them just another context by which they can develop and hone these intellectual and interpersonal skills that will serve them as they go out into the world, either in professional sports or whatever it is they endeavor to do.
Now, when you accepted the position of president here, you had the good fortune to have Harry Stinson already on board as your athletic director. He raves about the support you've given him in expanding into esports. What led Lincoln University into esports?
Well, Harry led us into esports. He brought the whole idea to me, and I have to say I did not understand it when he talked about it. I thought it was just video games.
Now, when you win the championship, was it your idea, or will it still be Harry's idea?
It'll still be Harry's idea. I try to give Harry credit for all that he brings to the university, but he has helped me to understand it, not just from an opportunity standpoint for our students, but also just a way to get in a new revenue generating game that is just growing tremendously. I like that the esports sort of connects with Generation Z. Mm-hmm. They grew up with technology. They grew up with playing video games. And again, it's another way that we can use something that they really enjoy doing to get to our bottom line. So as I was talking to Harry a couple of days ago, we talked about just how much skill and problem solving it takes.
Yes.
I play rescue pet. I rescue pets every morning on Pet Rescue. Keeping my brain working, but you know, it's not an e-sport. I don't know. I asked if it was an e-sport, but you know, it's one of those video games, and you have to figure out how to get the pets out of boxes and stuff like that. It takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of problem solving. You got to set things up.
Sure. You
have to think ahead. Those are just intellectual skills.
All this first thing in the morning.
Right. Get me going. It gets me going. But I think if we start to see esports not just as you know, video games, I guess, but as an opportunity.
Connects with engineering, computer sciences,
right,
and other
there
technical.
Are so many other aspects to it. Not to mention those who engage in it are actually really spending a lot of time developing and increasing their intellect because of the kind of problem solving and critical thinking that it takes to be good at a game like that. I think we'll understand that it really does have a place at the center of the university today, especially from a pedagogy standpoint, in a way to really connect many things with what it is we want our students to learn and engage in. So I think it's absolutely a wonderful opportunity to bring 21st century teaching to the university that connects well with the students that we serve today.
Now, in terms of the student athletes that you have, Lincoln University was just honored with being selected by Chi Alpha Sigma to join their Academic Honor Society. Do you think that Lincoln University attracts student athletes of high academic potential, or does Lincoln University create those student athletes once they're here?
So again, I don't think it's either or. I think that we're attracting more students who especially athletes who want to be more well-rounded, that want to excel at their sport, but also excel in the classroom. And we offer an opportunity for them to bring both together. Again, athletics has a model of student support that needs to be mimicked, I think, for all students, and that is the high touch you get from coaches, to having mandatory study, to really having to stay in good standing in order to be eligible to play. All those things come together to actually create a different kind of, I think, investment in education for the athlete. And that is a model, I think, that if you translate it to other students in ways that are similar, you can get the same kind of academic excellence that we're getting from many of our athletes.
Now, there was a recent piece on HBCU Game Day Network that 5-star basketball recruits are now visiting HBCUs. Joshua Clark, a 5-star recruit from California, and Malik Maker, a 5-star recruit from Canada, both visited Howard University on one of their recruiting trips. Does that surprise you?
It surprises me. Yes, it does surprise me. So I came to Lincoln after spending 8 years at Winston-Salem State University, the undergraduate home of Earl the Pearl Monroe.
Oh, you don't have to tell me that. He was my third favorite basketball player.
And you know, and others who were there. And we know that when Earl went to Winston-Salem State, the options for black athletes in higher education were not great. And now those options have opened up, and so athletes are being recruited, especially those who are highly skilled. And you know, my concern there is about, you know, just really the statistics on how many of those athletes will really end up going pro. And I often wonder what the success rate is of black athletes who are recruited, especially to some of the top sports schools, and how that connects with what they're getting academically. And so that we have top athletes looking for an environment like a Howard. I think they would be looking for a place where they could not just excel in their sport, but also excel in the classroom, try to bring together what HBCUs have done historically for creating individuals who can go out in the world and be leaders and have great careers with what they want to do in their sport. And I would say more should look at historically black colleges.
Why would you tell those recruits to go to a historically black college or university rather than a Duke or Kentucky?
Well, you know, again, you look at how many people who get recruited to a Duke or Kentucky. I actually have a cousin who went to Nebraska and ended up in the pros and ended up having a short career because of an injury. So some people do go and they go off to Kentucky and so on, and then they get to get a contract with the NBA or the NFL or the hockey league or whatever. But how many are not? You know,
about 99%.
moving. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so depending upon what it is you want to do in the future and where is it that you think you will be nurtured both as an athlete and a student, I think becomes really very important. And so when young people make that decision, I think they have to think more broadly than just wins and losses and the time that you spend as a college athlete, and really think more realistically about, you know, what is it that you want to do the rest of your life. And even if you are fortunate enough to get drafted to the pros, what is your career once that's over, and how will that institution prepare you to be ready to make a career change whenever it is that you decide to do so. So I don't think anyone's decision about what college they want to go to should be based just upon a sports program. I think they have to really ask themselves about the whole education that they will receive. And I think for many, especially athletes of color, they'll find in HBCUs an environment that will nurture them as student athletes, that will prepare them not just for the fields and the courts, but will also prepare them for the world beyond college. And I think that should be a serious consideration as they begin to think about their choices.
You know, it'd be wonderful if more 5-star recruits did go to HBCUs, but that's not the greatest challenge ahead for HBCUs. What do you consider those to be?
I think our greatest challenge is ensuring that our students are able to matriculate on a consistent basis from a financial standpoint. So as we look at the greatest stressor on students at HBCUs especially, it's not academics, it's finances. And as the cost of education continues to increase, yet the incomes of certain groups are not keeping pace with that, I worry that our institutions, the cost of our institutions will outpace the ability of the students we serve to pay. That affects their ability to stay and persist it often increases the time to degree for them. And for many people, it will cause a major detour in their education. And so as we try to make sure that we can offer education to our students, we have to make sure that, number one, it's affordable, and that when the cost is more than our students can afford, that we have the private funds and donations that will allow us to close those financial gaps, so that they won't have to do the kind of stopping out that we see, especially for students of color and low-income students.
In your ability to recognize and meet these challenges, how has your leadership style evolved over the year? You're now president of a major university.
How has it evolved? I think I've learned a lot along the way that eventually sort of culminated into just a really broad view of the institution and the challenges. I started out as a career academic. You know, I was on a faculty, went through the whole tenure track, so I saw the university from the perspective of a teacher and then a chair of a department, and then I eased myself into administration, where I was able to sort of see it operating at a much higher level. You get to understand that success for an institution is not about one thing, but it's about how multiple things converge to sort of create a context and a time. And through my training, I've just come to understand that if we're going to be successful as an institution, we have to keep our eye on multiple balls at multiple times. But your bottom line always has to be the education that you're delivering to your students, so that you can maximize their success at graduation. And so, you know, that's how we operate here. We sort of look at a big picture and prioritize our resources in such a way that we can maximize student success at the end of their time here. And I have to say, it's just a wonderful thing to see when it actually works. So I'm having a great time.
So we've talked about family throughout this interview, so let's finish up the interview with one question. We're bringing my family. My cousin's a pilot for Delta Airlines. He says the first rule of being a pilot is fly the plane. What do you consider the first rule of being a college president?
First rule, student success. And so if you come in and that's your ultimate goal, if that's what drives you every day, I think that you can be successful as a president.
Well, Dr. Allen, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
This is Jonathan Yates for HBCU Game Day Network. Thank you for joining us for From the Front Porch from Lincoln University. Thank you.